So there's a small group of people that were brought into this world to make it a worse place. They're your criminals, your tyrants, your killers, your manipulators, who bent millions to their own will, not through brilliance alone, but through a terrifying understanding of how human nature operates. From Stalin to Escobar, from Hitler to Bundy, these men weren't just random monsters. They all understood one thing, and that one thing was power. They knew how to effectively exploit the glitches in human nature. You see, the same instincts that allow you and me to love, to create, to build something meaningful could also be used to destroy. And these men, perhaps better than anyone, understood that. They knew how to distort the truth, how to convince people, how to unlock emotion out of someone without using logic. They learned that the most effective way to control people wasn't through violence alone, it was through voluntary surrender. You see, if you and I were to convince a crowd that obedience is safe, they'll police themselves harder than any soldier ever could. If you make people repeat the same lie out loud, soon they'll defend it as if it were their own idea. If you turn survival into privilege, suddenly the victim will thank you, the executioner, for letting them live another day. And so that's a unique core of power. It doesn't just chain your body, it colonizes your mind. And so before you consider to keep watching or to click off this video, it's worth saying one thing. These principles, the 25 quotes I have listed, aren't just my random hot takes. You see, I stress tested, reverse engineered, I went full digital archaeologist, cross-referencing speeches, books, court transcripts, podcasts, interviews, private archives from top historians, psychologists, and survivors, looking for the mechanics beneath all the madness. And so what I learned is brutal but simple. The result they left was a legacy of blood, fear, and control. Because inside their words are lessons so raw and so uncomfortable that ignoring them makes you weaker. And that's where this video comes in. The 25 greatest quotes from history's most dangerous men. Law 1, emotion beats logic, Adolf Hitler. Picture this, it's 1926, 37-year-old Hitler sits in an 8x8 prison cell in Landsberg Fortress, Bavaria. A failed coup has landed him here. The beer hall push, his first desperate grab for power, ended in disaster. By this time, he's almost 40, and instead of leading Germany, he's locked away, stripped of the crowd's roar, forced to wrestle with silence. And in that silence, he writes page after page of what will later become Mein Kampf. In it, he writes a chilling line that entrenched itself in history. The broad masses of the people are more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. So what does that mean in bro terms? He's saying people don't really think their way into decisions. They feel their way. And so why is this important to know? Because you can't persuade the masses with logic. You can only persuade them with emotions. That's why an ad doesn't sell you sneakers. It sells you confidence. That's why politicians don't sell you tax plans. They sell you hope. And Hitler understood this better than almost anybody. And the lesson here is terrifying but true. You are not as rational as you think. Your life is being steered constantly, not by facts, not by logic, but by feelings. And whoever controls those feelings most controls you. And so if you can touch what people fear, what they desire, what they dream about in secret, you don't just win the argument, you win them. You win their loyalty. Law 2, when people see a strong horse and a weak horse, by nature, they will like the strong horse better. Osama bin Laden. You see, bin Laden understood something primal. People don't follow hesitation. They follow brute strength. They don't follow morality. They don't follow fairness. They follow strength. And here's the irony. Today, especially in the West, we romanticize indecision. We dress it up as being reflective, open-minded, thinking twice, taking time to find yourself out. But to most people, indecision isn't attractive. It's exhausting. People aren't drawn to the person who hesitates. Think about it in your own life. You're drawn to the person that moves with conviction, even if they're not perfect, even if they don't have the right story. Think about it. When someone can't decide where to eat, when they waffle about their career, when they drag their feet, telling you how they feel, do you lean in closer, or does part of you just want to pull back? And so we like to believe that being uncertain makes us deep, that we're serving the interests of the other person, but the truth is, indecision signals weakness, and weakness repels. So law 2 is this: always be the strong horse. Don't be paralyzed by options. Pick a direction, ride with conviction, and adjust and adapt on the way. Law 3, you can get much farther with a kind word and a gun to your head than you can with a kind word alone. Al Capone. In other words, charm opens doors, but leverage, having leverage over someone, is what keeps them open. Think about your own life. You can be the friend who's always helpful, but if you never set boundaries, people naturally will take advantage of you. You can be that employee that works really hard, but if you never constantly demand your worth, you'll stay underpaid. You can be the partner who gives endlessly, but if you never enforce respect, you're gonna get drained. So law 3 is this: kindness works best when backed by leverage. In other words, give generously, yes, but let people know there's a line, because without consequence, your kindness isn't power. It's weakness dressed up as virtue. Law 4, it is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver. Cesare Borgia. Borgia was the son of a pope, a warlord who murdered, schemed, seduced his way across all of Renaissance Italy. Even Machiavelli had idolized him as the perfect model of power, and his words cut deep like a knife. He'd say that the sweetest victory isn't just winning, it's outplaying someone who thought they were smarter than you. That's why in your own life, think about in school, people respected the kid that stood up to the biggest bully, not the one that went out of his way to pick on the weak kid or the nerd. That's why in the club, when you see your friend and you guys are dancing and he approaches the hottest girl in the room, that carries much more weight than the other friend that just goes up to the easy one and maybe even seduces her. So law 4 is this: if you're gonna pick on someone, pick on the biggest guy. Law 5, what is more immoral than war, yet what is more commonly practiced. Marquis de Sade. De Sade lived on the edges of society. He was jailed, he was hated, he was censored, but his words cut through with uncomfortable clarity years later, because he pointed out something most people never admit. We're not truly shocked by evil. We're shocked by what feels new. Most people we meet don't resist what's actually wrong. They resist what feels different. If cruelty, lies, or injustice becomes routine, people don't just tolerate it. They defend it. Think about all the meaningless wars that are going on across the world, etc., etc. So law 5 is this: people accept evil if it feels normal. And that's the terrifying truth. The greatest danger to your life, the thing that shocks you most, isn't what's actually worth being most shocked about. It's what you slowly get used to. Law 6, control the narrative, control the man. Lavrenti Beria. In other words, people don't actually live or die by truth. They live or die by the story they told about truth. And we see this everywhere. At work, the coworker who constantly gossips about you can tank your reputation even if you did nothing wrong. Online, a single tweet can be taken completely out of context and can completely rewrite your entire identity. Even in relationships, once someone labels you selfish or toxic, you'll spend months trying to escape that frame. So law 6 is this: control the narrative or it will control you. Don't assume that being right protects you. Shape how people talk about you, or someone else will write a story that buries you. Law 7, do not think that the war we are waging is for al-Baghdadi or for the state. It is for God. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Baghdadi cloaked his hunger for domination in a cause that was bigger than himself. And maybe he believed it, maybe he didn't, but that's secondary to the fact that if you can turn yourself into someone that does things for a grander purpose, that resists serving your ego, they'll sacrifice everything for you and for a cause because it feels larger than life. And you see this principle everywhere. Politicians say they're not running for themselves, but they're running for the people. CEOs say they're not chasing profit, but they're just here to change the world. Even in daily life, the friend who frames a favor as, come on bro, just help the group, gets more buy-in than the one that admits, listen, I just want this for myself. So law 7 is this: the most dangerous power is the one that pretends it isn't about you. Law 8, the masses are asses and can be led anywhere. Kim Jong-il. Kim Jong-il understood a dark truth. Individuals can think, but crowds can't. And you see this every day. There's online mobs canceling people without evidence. Even in our own life, how many things have we done, not because we genuinely believed in them, but because the boys or the friend group or the political party was vouching for it. So law 8 is this: masses don't think, they follow. And if you want to influence, don't waste time convincing every single person one by one. Speak to the crowd's emotions. Repeat your message constantly. Let the herd move itself. Law 9, if you let people slide once, they'll start to think they can ice skate. The great, notorious Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy knew the streets ran on reputation. To him, the moment you let one slight go unchecked, you weren't just forgiving, you were teaching everyone else how to walk all over you. People in your own life will test your limits constantly. They will see how much they can get out of you, not because they hate you, but because human nature, something so innate in us, looks for where the line in people really is, even your own friends. And you see this everywhere. At work, if you decide one day to take on the extra task just this once, suddenly it's your new job. In dating, if you let a disrespectful comment slide from this girl you're seeing, it becomes the norm. She starts walking all over you, and vice versa. Even with friends, if you always pay and never push back, like, hey, yo, could you pay me back? Where's my money? They will never expect to pay you back. So law 9 is this: never let disrespect slide. Law 10, loyalty dies when the money does. Nicky Barnes. So Barnes, he's had many documentaries made about him. He ran Harlem like a freaking king, okay, until the empire completely dried up and all his money vanished. Until he got screwed over, did he discover that most of his friends, the woman in his life, the soldiers, even his own family, walked away from him as soon as he lost all his money. Because he understood one thing about the streets and about loyalty. It's that it's not measured in words. Loyalty isn't measured in what people say to you up front. It's measured in resources. So law 10 is this: money tests loyalty better than betrayal. Don't measure people by what they say when things are good. Measure them by who sticks with you when there's nothing left to take. Law 11, everyone has a price, by Pablo Escobar. In other words, no one is incorruptible. Everyone wants something, whether it be money, love, respect, freedom, validation. And if you can find what that is, you own that person, at least to some degree, because human nature looks unshakable on the surface, as if everyone has their values, but everyone at the end of the day has a pressure point. The trick is discovering what that pressure point is. Law 12, a lie once told remains a lie, but a lie told 1,000 times becomes the truth. Joseph Goebbels. In other words, people don't really believe what's real. We think that naturally we like to fight for the truth, we like to fight for what's right, for our ethics. And Goebbels, in retrospect, understood that human nature doesn't cling to facts, it clings to familiarity. So law 12 is this: repetition shapes reality. If you repeat something enough times, people will begin to believe it by second nature. And the same is true of you. If you repeat to yourself that you're someone that's worthy of respect and love and all these amazing things, you'll get closer to being that guy. And if you repeat the opposite, the same is true, because the human mind doesn't follow truth, it follows what echoes. Law 13, men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see but few can feel. Niccolo Machiavelli. The world doesn't reward the best, it only rewards the best presented. And Machiavelli twisted this into cold politics, but it plays out in your life every single day. So law 13 is this: appearance beats reality. Stop waiting for people to see the quote-unquote real you, because they won't. Craft the version they do see, and in the eyes of the world, perception is power. Law 14, the less you speak, the more you will hear. Joseph Stalin. In other words, if you talk too much, what you do is you hand people the roadmap to your mind. And here's the part that stings. You probably talk yourself out of power every single day, because I know I do. You explain too much in conversations, you overshare online, but silence is where our power lives. So law 14 is this: silence is a weapon, use it wisely. Law 16, to keep you is no benefit, to destroy you is no loss. In other words, the world will discard what it sees as replaceable. That applies to products, to workers, to friends, even to entire populations under dictatorships. So law 16 is this: make yourself non-replaceable. Build a skill no one else has, cultivate a perspective that no one else brings, become the friend, the leader, the creator who can't just be swapped out. Because if the world sees you as unique, you will get unique results. Law 17, do not trust the cheering, for those persons would shout as much if you or I were going to be hanged. Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell, I found out about him a few months ago. He was a 17th century soldier that overthrew the English king and ruled as a dictator. He led these brutal campaigns in Ireland and ended up becoming one of the most feared men of his time. And he understood perhaps better than most people of that time, that the crowd's praise meant nothing. Because the same people cheering him on today will cheer just as loud when he falls or gets killed. In other words, people don't cheer for you. They cheer for what they perceive you to be. Take celebrities, they get worshipped all the time until one mistake makes them the next viral meme. Law 17 is understanding this. Don't trust the crowd. Don't trust the vast majority of people. And don't mistake praise for loyalty, because the same people celebrating your rise will happily watch your downfall, and they'll probably do it with a smile. Law 18. People endure others' misfortunes easily. François de la Rochefoucauld. Did I say that right? Human nature is inherently selfish. We're creatures. People will always care more about their own story than yours. And so if you expect the world to stop for your struggles and give you a round of applause, you'll die waiting. So law 18 is this, and we're all working towards it. It's that nobody cares about your pain. So don't waste power begging other people for sympathy. Transform it, weaponize it, use it as fuel, because the world will scroll past your wounds, but it will stop for your victories. Law 19, the death of one man is a tragedy, but the death of millions is a statistic. Joseph Stalin. How did Stalin know this so well? Because he slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people. Take the Gulag Archipelago. Under Stalin, millions were swallowed by prison camps. They were starved, frozen, worked to death. But how did he get here? How was he able to oppress these people into silence? It wasn't just through power and violence alone. It was also through Stalin's ability to tell stories about the enemy. It's why we cry at one GoFundMe story, but we scroll past a ton of headlines about thousands of people dying in some country we've never heard of. Our brains cannot process scale, and that's exactly why leaders like Stalin thrived. It's why the best people you've met in sales, in marketing, in leadership, in storytelling, they don't drown people in numbers. Nobody feels inspired when you say, we've helped 15,000 people. That's a statistic. It's flat, it's lifeless, it's forgettable. Instead, the best of the best, they give one name, one story, one heartbeat. Law 20. It is better to live one day as a lion than 100 years as a sheep. Benito Mussolini. Mussolini didn't build his power in silence. He built it through theater. The speeches, the marches, the black shirts flooding the streets. It wasn't subtle. It was a spectacle. He understood that in politics, people don't follow quiet competence. They follow noise. They follow energy. They follow the appearance of strength, even when that strength is hollow. And here's where it stings. How much of our own life is spent trying to blend in? How often do you choose safety over boldness, comfort over risk, being liked over just wanting to be noticed? Mussolini twisted this law into fascist theater, obviously, but the principle itself holds. People don't remember the sheep, they remember the lion. In business, in art, in relationships, being invisible is the death of someone. So law 20 is this. Be bold enough to be seen. Make the move, raise your voice, take the risk, because 100 years of quiet obedience won't leave a mark, but one act of fearless leadership will echo in eternity. Law 21. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. Machiavelli lived in Renaissance Italy, as we talked about, a world where egos were sharper than swords. And he understood that power wasn't just about what you did, it was about how others felt watching you do it. And notice how this is different from Law 20, because Mussolini's law was about boldness, about stepping out of the shadows and being seen. Machiavelli's law is about timing. Boldness in front of the crowd works. Boldness in front of your boss, that might get you killed. Law 22, strike while the iron is hot. Napoleon. Napoleon understood something most people never learn, that hesitation kills. Now you can analyze and you can plan and you can debate endlessly, but opportunities are like lightning. They blink and they're gone. And so his genius wasn't just strategy, it was the speed in which he did things. He moved faster than the enemy could think. And by the time they reacted, the game was already his. Meaning, planning matters, yes, but action is what bends the trajectory of the world. The difference between the dreamers and the leaders isn't who had the best idea, it's who moved first. And think about your own life. How many times have you sat on a text too long and missed out on the moment? How many times have you seen a famous person on the street and I don't want to bother him? How many times did you hold off launching something until someone else stole the idea? How many times did you hesitate at the door of a conversation and the chance never came again? So law 22 is this: when you make the decision, when you decide to make the decision, when you develop the plan, go in and do not stop. Law 23, a relationship of subordination is permanent until it is destroyed by liberation. In bro terms, once someone depends on you, they're locked in until they figure out how to break free. And so I think in my own life, the times I felt most alive, the times I felt like I was really able to break through is when I had a source of leverage, when I was able to use something to my advantage, to be able to come away with something and say, okay, he might have this on me, but without me, he can't get this. And finally, law 25, give me 6 lines written by the most honest man, and I will find something in them to hang him. Cardinal Richelieu. Richelieu was the power behind the French throne in the 1600s. He understood a truth that we still ignore. Your words are never safe. And this is something I struggle with a ton, because even honesty, even saying something to someone, opening up to someone that might be unfamiliar, that might not be in our social circle, can be twisted, repackaged, weaponized against us. And so Richelieu used this to destroy his enemies. He would take one word, one thing out of context, and he would make it someone's entire personality. And so law 25 is this: your words will be used against you. Stop narrating every thought, stop over explaining. The less ammunition you give, the less anyone else, particularly the enemy, can fire back. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing.